What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Contrarian. My name is Logan. I really like to talk about all things the markets and investing, and most of all going against the majority of other opinions out there, especially when I believe that these opinions are incorrect. And right now, oil and the whole oil situation and energy situation is one of the areas in which I see people really getting too soon on the bandwagon of being very optimistic. I would say overly optimistic about energy and energy producers. Now, a few caveats here. First of all, I have been very bullish on oil and oil producers and energy in general over the last year. So I've been early to call the current run that we've had from roughly $40 a barrel up until recently peaking at around $135 a barrel. So I've been very correct in seeing the price action over the last year. I'd say a little more than a year. Early 2021, I came out very optimistic on oil, essentially laying out why I believed that oil would do very well as demand came back and as a new administration brought much tougher regulations on the oil industry and energy in general. And that was a very contrarian stance at that time as well, actually. If you think back to then, there were a lot of people out there saying that, well, demand probably isn't going to be as strong as it was pre-COVID. Maybe there's things like EVs that are going to, revolutionize the industry overnight, kind of stances like that. I was really skeptical of those sorts of views. And because of that, obviously I've done very well over the last year in terms of my forecast on oil and energy in general. Also, I'll make a disclaimer that I am still long-term very optimistic on oil. If you were to ask me, hey Logan, where do you think oil is going in the next 10 years? I would say, much higher than where it even is right now. So, next 10 years, I think commodities basically across the board will do very well. However, I do think currently oil is at a cyclical peak. So obviously markets have cycles. So I think that about a week ago when oil reached $135, that's likely a cyclical peak that could last for a few years before it resumes going much higher. Now, there's a lot of factors that go into this calculation. I'm not just saying this because the majority of analysts are spitballing price targets out there, but that is a sign of essentially people being incorrect. Usually, Wall Street is incorrect. I would almost say that Wall Street is almost always incorrect at inflection points. And by inflection points, I mean that usually whenever a commodity or a stock or whatever it might be, usually whenever that is at a peak or a trough, usually everybody is either all in or, staying the heck away from that, whatever it might be. And right now, I see analysts tripping over each other to raise their price targets even higher. In the last week, I've seen price targets just get thrown out there ever more, increasingly higher price targets for oil. Analysts saying that oil could reach, $200 a barrel or more just in this current year, 2022. Now, obviously, this has to do with the current situation in Russia and Ukraine and the strain on the supply side of the curve that oil has received due to Russia being a major exporter of oil. And also, this has put a major stress on other sources of energy, natural gas being a major one. I'm obviously just referring to oil in this video. I'm not as bearish on natural gas, but that's a whole separate video entirely. But there are several key factors I'll point out that do suggest to me that oil is going to head lower than where it currently sits at around $100 a barrel. My target for 2022 is oil likely settles around anywhere from $70 to $80 a barrel before it could begin marching higher. But obviously, this is being recorded in mid-March of 2022, so there could be more events that happen that could change this outlook. This is simply going off of what I currently see out there. And I'll dive into these factors right now. So first of all, you have Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, Russia exports a lot of their oil to other countries around the world. The US receives a lot of oil from Russia. And so this has put a strain on the supply side of the curve, and it was almost the anticipation of this strain and this shock on the supply side of the curve that sent oil prices up roughly 26%, looking at when Russia announced their invasion of Ukraine to when oil peaked at $135 a barrel. That was an extreme run-up that oil had, due to what could be called a more minor disruption to the supply side of the curve. Now, there's a lot of factors that will help alleviate this issue that I see as well. One of them being what is known as demand destruction. So in other words, when energy becomes significantly more expensive in just a period of 2 weeks, it's very possible, if not expected, that a lot of people out there will just decide, hey, we're not going to use our RV as much. We're not going to, for example, vacation like we were planning on, simply because it's much out of our budget now. So that's what's known as demand destruction, and that's likely happening right now, and it's likely going to alleviate the issues we're seeing with spiking energy prices right now. Demand destruction is very effective at alleviating these sort of extreme swings in the market that we can see, simply because when a simple activity like filling up an RV moves out of your budget, you're simply just not going to be able to do that. Therefore, demand for oil can fall dramatically as a result. Also, producers are ramping up their production like never before. Major oil producers that already had operations up and going, that weren't completely, producing oil at 100% yet, they're ramping up their production to as much as they can, because oil is, very profitable to be producing right now. So in a way, it's almost like the restrictions that the current administration has put on oil has been very helpful for the largest oil companies out there. It's their dream come true in a way, because they can now sell their commodity for, double what it was a year ago roughly, or even more than that. So oil companies love it. They're producing as much oil as they possibly can right now. That is also going to alleviate the supply side of the curve as well, even though Russia isn't exporting their energy to the United States, mainly because we aren't supposedly taking it right now. US producers are making up that difference immensely. I'll also point out that China actually recently shut down a major province, Shenzhen, I believe is what it's called. China has a zero COVID policy, so essentially they shut down this entire province. That has the likelihood of impacting China's demand for oil as well. Obviously, China imports a lot of their oil. So this in and of itself could alleviate some of the tensions surrounding Russia's exporting of oil. So in other words, oil is a very simple commodity to look at. It's a very supply and demand driven commodity. It's one of the most predictable markets out there. If you simply look at the supply and demand, you look at each side of the curve independently and come to a conclusion from that, and maybe not based on what you're seeing out there in the headlines. A lot of what analysts are doing right now, I don't believe is really good analysis of the oil markets. Obviously, there's some other factors that could change this analysis. For example, if the supply chain gets significantly worse, if conflicts continue to escalate around the world, this could significantly impact this forecast. But simply going off of what I currently see, I'm no longer bullish on oil or oil producers. I think they've run about as far as they can, at least for now. So my money is currently where my mouth is. I've sold out of all of my positions that I had in oil producers and oil producing ETFs. So you can rest assured that I am, putting my money where my mouth is. Obviously, disclaimer on this entire video, I'm not giving any sort of advice to any of you watching this. I'm simply putting some food for thought out there into some of your minds, maybe just cautioning people, as to what to really believe out there on the street. Some narratives that I don't think are entirely based on, some fundamentals that I currently see, but obviously people come to different conclusions. Ultimately, I call myself the contrarian. I call this channel the contrarian because I oftentimes come to very different opinions than other people. So let me know what you guys think about this video down in the comment section below. If you liked this video, just give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing to this channel, and if you didn't like it, give it a thumbs down and let me know why down in the comment section below. And I hope to see you again at some point.